I was paying $1,400 to live in my parents' house while my siblings paid nothing. My mom said if I helped more around the house, she might lower it. One night at dinner I got angry and said this. The table went completely silent. And then my mother charged me $1,400 a month to live in the house I grew up in. And before you ask, no, that didn't include groceries, utilities, or even a spot in the driveway. That was reserved for my brother's truck. I parked on the street like a stranger. Actually, worse than a stranger. Guests got the driveway. I got the curb. My name is Jolene. I'm 27, I have a 4-year-old daughter named Birdie, and until recently, I worked as a housekeeper at a Hampton Inn off the interstate in Dayton, Ohio. $12.60 an hour. After taxes, roughly $1,600 a month. So after paying my parents their rent, I had about $200 left to somehow feed my child, buy gas, and exist. Here's the part that still makes my blood hot. My older brother Tyler, 31, lived in that same house. Rent-free. My younger sister Casey, 23, same house. Rent-free. Tyler had the basement bedroom with his own bathroom. Casey had her childhood room with the bay window. And me and Birdie shared my old room on a full-size mattress where my daughter kicked me in the ribs every night like she was training for something. Tyler bartended 3 nights a week and spent the rest of his time gaming. Casey worked part-time at a tanning salon. Neither of them paid a single dollar. I asked my mom once why I was the only one paying rent. She looked at me like I'd said the dumbest thing in human history and said, "Because you have a child, Jolene. You're using more resources." More resources. My 4-year-old who ate chicken nuggets and apple slices. That was the drain on the household. My dad, Hank, he never said much about anything. He sat in his recliner, watched ESPN, and let my mom run the house like her personal kingdom. And my mom, Denise, she ran it hard. Everything she did was framed as a massive favor. Letting me live in my own childhood bedroom? An act of charity so generous I should have been writing thank you notes. On top of the $1,400, she started hinting that I should help more around the house. Said if I pitched in she might lower the rent. Might. Consider. That woman used the word might like a legal loophole. So I did it. I cleaned the kitchen every night. Vacuumed the living room. Did everyone's laundry. Tyler's gym clothes, Casey's work polos, my dad's endless khaki pants. I scrubbed the bathrooms on weekends. I literally cleaned houses for a living and then came home and cleaned another house for the privilege of paying to live in it. Can you imagine? My hands were cracked and raw. Birdie would line up her little Disney princess band-aids on my knuckles like she was performing surgery. That kid was the only reason I kept going. Now you might be wondering where my grandmother was in all this. I'll get to her. Trust me, she becomes very important. But at this point my Grandma Ruth lived 2 hours away in Lancaster, and my mom had told her I was doing great and so happy to be home. Grandma believed it. Why would her own daughter lie? Oh, Denise would lie like it paid well. So here's where it shifts. Thursday night, February. Ugly gray Ohio winter. I worked a double shift, picked up Birdie from daycare, which I also paid for alone, and came home to find the whole family eating pot roast at the dinner table. My mom didn't make me a plate. Didn't set me a place. She looked up and said, "Oh, there's leftovers if you want to fix yourself something." I set Birdie down and she ran to the table because she was 4 and she smelled food. She tried to climb into an empty chair and Casey said, "That's actually where my bag is." Her purse had a seat at the table. My daughter didn't. Something inside me shifted right then. You ever feel the exact second something changes in you? Like a switch. That was it. But I didn't explode. Not yet. I fixed Birdie a plate and we ate standing at the kitchen counter because all the chairs had been moved to the dining room for the family dinner. That didn't include us. The explosion came Sunday. My mom did Sunday dinners like clockwork. 5 o'clock, everyone at the table. I showed up. Put Birdie in a little yellow dress with daisies that Grandma Ruth had sent for her birthday. We sat down. Mom made her lemon chicken, and I'll give her this, the lemon chicken was good. That was the one thing I couldn't argue with. Then she looked right at me and said, "Jolene, the upstairs bathroom hasn't been done this week. If you want me to think about adjusting your rent, you need to stay on top of things." In front of everyone. Like I was the help. No, worse than the help because the help gets paid. I put my fork down. I said, "Mom, I pay you $1,400 a month. Tyler pays nothing. Casey pays nothing. I clean this entire house after 8-hour shifts. I pay for my groceries, Birdie's daycare, everything. And Thursday night you didn't even set a plate for my daughter." Casey's purse had a seat. Birdie didn't. The table went dead silent. Tyler stopped chewing. Casey looked up from her phone. My dad's eyes moved from his plate to me like he just realized other people existed. And my mom said, "I cannot believe you'd say that at my dinner table." Her table. Not the family table. Hers. I said, the table I scrubbed yesterday while you watched your shows. Then she hit me with the thing that broke me. She said, if you're so unhappy, maybe you should think about whether this arrangement is working for you. She said it like a dare. Because she knew I had nowhere to go and almost no money. She used that like a weapon right there over lemon chicken. What do you think I did? You think I backed down? Almost did. The old Jolene would have apologized, cleared the dishes, and cried in the bathroom after Bertie fell asleep. But I looked at my daughter sitting there picking chicken apart with her little fingers, totally unaware of anything, and I thought about what I was teaching her. That it's okay to pay for the privilege of being mistreated. Well, I stood up and said, you're right, Mom. This isn't working. And I went upstairs and packed. Let me tell you about packing your life and your kid's life into garbage bags and 2 suitcases. It's the saddest and most freeing thing you'll ever do. I had $612, a quarter tank of gas, and a 4-year-old who thought we were going on an adventure. Nobody came upstairs. Nobody knocked. I heard the TV turn on. They went back to their evening like nothing happened. I loaded the car, buckled Bertie in, and pulled away at 7:43 on a Sunday night. I told myself I wouldn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't. We stayed in a motel that first night. $49. The room smelled like smoke and the bedspread had a stain I chose not to investigate. But Bertie thought it was amazing because there was a vending machine. I let her get Doritos and she fell asleep at 8:30 with orange dust on her fingers. And I sat on that bed and cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because I missed that house. Because a $49 motel room felt safer than my parents' home. Sit with that for a second. Next morning I called every apartment complex in Dayton. Found a 1-bedroom at a place called Ridgewood Gardens. No ridge, no garden, but it had openings. $850 a month. The landlord, Mr. Perkins, looked at my pay stub, looked at Bertie coloring on his office floor and said, move in with first month and we'll spread the deposit over 3 months. A complete stranger showed me more kindness in 5 minutes than my family had in 2 years. So we moved into apartment 4B with garbage bags and an air mattress from Goodwill. No couch, no table. We ate on the floor that first week. Bertie called it a picnic. But starting over with nothing isn't romantic. I lay awake every night doing math. $850 for rent. Daycare. Gas. Food. I was short every month. I picked up doubles, ate once a day so Bertie could eat 3 times. And you know who called during those weeks? Nobody. Not Mom, not Dad, not Tyler, not Casey. 27 years in that family and they let me vanish. But somebody was about to find out what really happened. And when she did, I still get chills. My 73-year-old Grandma Ruth drove 2 hours through a rainstorm and turned my mother's world upside down. That part's coming very soon. And believe me, you're going to want to hear it. So there I was. Apartment 4B. Air mattress on the floor. A daughter who thought we were camping indoors and a bank account that made me nauseous every time I checked it. I picked up every extra shift the Hampton Inn would give me. Some weeks I worked 6 days. I'd drop Bertie off at Miss Claudette's house. She ran the home daycare. At 6:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't pick her up until almost 6 at night. That woman charged me $200 a month, which was a steal, and she loved Bertie like her own. Small mercies, right? But here's the thing about barely surviving. It doesn't leave room for anything else. I couldn't get sick. Couldn't have a car problem. Couldn't have any emergency at all because one unexpected expense would have knocked us out completely. I lived on the edge of disaster every single day and just hoped the wind didn't blow too hard. Bertie started asking questions around week 3. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. She said, Mommy, how come we don't go to Grandma Denise's house anymore? I told her we had our own house now. She said, but this house doesn't have a yard. And I said, no, but it has us and that's better than a yard. She thought about it and said, can we get a dog? 4 years old and already negotiating. I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where the people who are supposed to love you the most just don't show up? Not even a text. Because 4 weeks after I left, I still hadn't heard from a single member of my family. Not one. It was like I'd been erased from the family group chat. And actually I checked and yeah, I had been removed. Casey removed me. My own sister kicked me out of the group chat like I was some ex-boyfriend from 2019. That hurt more than the rent, honestly. Now, let me tell you about the phone call that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning in March. Bertie was watching cartoons on my phone because we didn't have a TV yet. I was sitting on the kitchen floor. We still didn't have chairs, eating peanut butter straight from the jar because that was breakfast. My phone rang and Bertie answered it before I could grab it because she thought it was a game. She goes, hi. This is Bertie. And I hear this voice through the speaker say, Bertie? Baby girl, is that you? Where's your mama? Grandma Ruth. I grabbed the phone so fast I almost dropped it. Grandma. She said, Jolene Marie, I just called your mother's house and Tyler told me you moved out weeks ago. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know what to say at first. I'd been so deep in survival mode that calling Grandma hadn't even crossed my mind. And part of me, the part my mother built, felt ashamed. Like I had failed. Like needing help meant I was weak. Isn't that twisted? My mom programmed me to feel guilty about asking for help so I'd stay trapped. Do you see how that works? I told Grandma Ruth the short version. That I'd been paying rent nobody else paid. That I was cleaning the whole house on top of working full-time. That Birdie didn't get a plate at dinner. That I left. There was a pause on the phone. A long one. And then Grandma Ruth said in this voice I'd only heard maybe twice in my entire life. This low, quiet, dangerous voice, she said, "She charged you $1,400? Yes, ma'am. And your brother and sister paid nothing? Nothing." Another pause. Then she said, "I'm getting in my car." I said, "Grandma, you don't have to." She said, "Jolene, I didn't ask for permission. What's your address?" That woman, 73 years old, bad knee, drives a 2009 Buick that sounds like it's coughing, and she got in that car and drove 2 hours from Lancaster to Dayton on a Saturday morning without thinking twice. It started raining about an hour into her drive. Not drizzling, pouring. The kind of Ohio rain that turns the highway into a river. She drove through it like it was sunshine. She showed up at my door at noon. I opened it and she stood there in the hallway, soaking wet, holding 2 grocery bags and a quilt. A quilt. She'd grabbed the quilt off her own bed before she left. She walked in, looked around the apartment, saw the air mattress, the bare walls, the empty kitchen, and she didn't say a word for about 30 seconds. She just stood there taking it in. Then she looked at me and her eyes filled up and she said, "Oh, baby. How long have you been living like this?" I couldn't even answer. I just fell into her and cried. I'm not a crier usually. I really am not. I'd been holding it together for weeks. But something about your grandmother showing up with a quilt and groceries in a rainstorm just breaks you in the best way. Birdie ran over and grabbed Grandma Ruth's leg and said, "Grandma Ruthie, we're camping." And Grandma Ruth looked down at her and said, "Not anymore, sweetheart." She unpacked those grocery bags like a woman on a mission. Real food. Chicken, rice, vegetables, bread, milk, juice boxes, fruit, cereal. She'd stopped at a Kroger on the way. She made us lunch right there in my empty kitchen, standing at the counter because, again, no chairs. She made chicken and rice in a pot I didn't even know I had. She'd bought that too. While we ate, I told her everything. The full version this time. 2 years of it. The rent, the cleaning, the way Mom talked to me, the Thursday pot roast dinner, the Sunday blow-up, all of it. Grandma Ruth listened without interrupting, which is not something she normally does. That woman has an opinion about everything and she'll share it whether you want it or not. But she just listened. And her face got harder and harder as I talked. By the end, she looked like she was carved out of stone. She said, "Your mother did this in my family's house. See, here's something I should explain. That house. The one my parents live in. Grandma Ruth helped them buy it. She gave them the down payment 20 years ago. $30,000 out of her savings. She did it so her grandkids would have a stable home. And now she was finding out what that stable home actually looked like for one of those grandkids. She pulled out her phone and called my mother right there in my apartment. Put it on speaker. I didn't ask her to, she just did it. My mom answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey Mom, what's?" Grandma Ruth said, "Denise, I'm sitting in Jolene's apartment right now. Her apartment with no furniture. Her apartment where she's sleeping on an air mattress with your granddaughter. Would you like to explain to me why I'm just now finding out about this?" Silence on the other end. Complete silence. And I have to be honest, hearing my mother speechless was so satisfying I almost smiled. Almost. Is that wrong? Tell me if that's wrong because I don't even care. My mom stammered out something like, "Mom, she chose to leave, I didn't make her." $1,400, Denise. You charged your daughter $1,400 while Tyler and Casey lived there for free. You had that child cleaning your house after working all day. You didn't even feed her daughter at your table. My mom started doing what she always does, playing victim. You're only hearing her side, Mom. You don't know the whole. I'm hearing the side that ends with my great-granddaughter sleeping on an air mattress. That's the only side I need. I wish you could have heard Grandma Ruth's voice. It wasn't yelling. She never yelled. It was worse than yelling. It was that quiet, controlled fury that makes every single word land like a hammer. My mom knew that voice. She grew up with that voice. And she was scared of it. Grandma Ruth said, "I gave you $30,000 for that house so my grandchildren would have a home. All of them. And you turned it into a way to squeeze money out of the one who could least afford it. I'm ashamed of you, Denise. Your father would be ashamed of you." That last part, mentioning my grandfather who passed away 8 years ago, I heard my mom gasp. Grandpa Walt was everything to my mom. Bringing him up was Grandma Ruth pulling out the big guns. My mom started crying. Said she didn't mean for things to get so bad, she was just trying to teach me responsibility. She didn't realize it was so hard on me. Grandma Ruth said, responsibility? You taught Tyler nothing. You taught Casey nothing. The only one you taught responsibility to was the one who already had it. That's not teaching, Denise. That's punishment. She hung up. Didn't say goodbye, didn't wait for a response. Just ended the call. Then she looked at me and said, now, let's fix this. And I want to tell you what Grandma Ruth did over the next 2 weeks. Because that woman operated like she had a personal vendetta against my situation and she was not going to rest until it was handled. She went to her bank in Lancaster the following Monday and took out money. She wouldn't tell me how much, but she showed up at my apartment with an envelope and said, this is for furniture and 3 months of breathing room. Don't you dare argue with me. I argued with her. She ignored me completely. Classic Grandma Ruth. By the end of that week, Bertie and I had real beds. A kitchen table with chairs. A couch from a consignment shop that smelled a little like lavender and old lady perfume but was the most comfortable thing I'd ever sat on. Bertie got a little bookshelf for her room. Well, her corner since it was a 1-bedroom, and Grandma Ruth filled it with books she'd bought at a library sale. But Grandma wasn't done. Not even close. Because the furniture was the easy part. What she did to my parents. That's what really got to me. She drove to my parents' house the following weekend. I wasn't there for this part, but Tyler told me later. And Tyler, for all his faults, is a terrible liar, so I believe every word. Grandma Ruth walked into that house and sat my parents down at the kitchen table. Tyler and Casey were there too. She made them all sit. And she told them that she was reconsidering the financial help she'd planned to leave them. That the way they treated me and Bertie showed her something about their character that she didn't like. That Tyler and Casey were going to start paying rent, real rent, or they were going to move out. And that my mother was going to apologize to me. A real apology. Not her usual, I'm sorry you feel that way nonsense. My mom apparently tried to argue. Grandma Ruth said, Denise, I'm not asking. Tyler called me that night. First time he'd reached out since I left. He sounded shaky. He said, Joe, Grandma came over and it was intense. I almost laughed. I said, welcome to accountability, Tyler. He got quiet and then said, I should have said something. About the rent and everything. I knew it wasn't fair. You think? But I didn't say that. I just said, yeah. You should have. Casey didn't call. That didn't surprise me. But my mom did something I never expected. And I'm going to tell you about that because it caught me completely off guard, and what happened after that turned everything upside down again. Some of you might think you know where this is going. I promise you don't. 3 days after Grandma Ruth's visit, my mom showed up at my apartment. No call, no warning. Just a knock on a Tuesday morning. I opened the door and there was Denise in her nice coat holding Tupperware, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. She looked smaller. Like Grandma Ruth had taken the air right out of her. She said, can I come in? I almost said no. But Bertie heard her voice and came running, Grandma knees. With that big smile, and I couldn't slam a door in front of that. So I let her in. He looked around. Saw the second-hand furniture, the small clean space. Something real cracked behind her eyes. She set the Tupperware on the counter. Lemon chicken. You think lemon chicken fixes 2 years of that? Because looking at it made me angry and sad at the same time. She sat at my table, the one Grandma bought because my mother made sure I couldn't afford my own, and started talking. Said Grandma Ruth told her things she wasn't ready to hear. Said she'd been up 3 nights replaying everything. The rent, the cleaning, the dinner where Bertie didn't have a plate. I said, Mom, it was bad for 2 years. You didn't care. She flinched. Good. Then she surprised me. She said, you're right. I told myself you were fine because that was easier. You never pushed back, so I kept pushing more. And I made excuses for Tyler and Casey because that was easier too. Old Jolene would have said, it's okay, Mom. New Jolene let the silence sit. I said, your granddaughter ate standing at your counter because there wasn't a chair for her. I ate 1 meal a day for weeks so she could eat 3. That's not unfair, Mom. That's cruel. She put her hands over her face and cried. Real crying. Not her usual performance. Bertie whispered, Mommy, Grandma Knees is sad. I said, she's okay, baby. Grown-ups need to cry sometimes. When she pulled herself together, she said, tell me how to fix this. I said, you can't fix it with lemon chicken, Mom. She laughed. Small and broken. I laughed too. What else can you do? I told her what I needed. I said, I'm not coming back to that house. This is our home. If you want to be in our lives, everything changes. No more treating me like the maid. No more acting like Bertie's a burden. She told me Grandma Ruth was now making Tyler and Casey pay $500 a month each. Can you imagine their faces? Casey apparently called Grandma screaming about how it wasn't fair. Grandma said, fair? Call your sister and ask her about fair. I love that woman so much. 2 weeks later, my dad showed up. Alone. This was shocking because Hank's life cycle was work, recliner, ESPN, repeat. He stood at my door holding a Home Depot bag and said, "I brought you a smoke detector. Your hallway doesn't have one." That was Hank's love language. Safety equipment instead of words. He checked my windows, tested outlets, fixed a crooked cabinet. Then sat down and said something huge. He said, "I should have stopped it, Jolene. Your grandmother called me separately. She said silence isn't neutrality. Silence is siding with whoever has the power." My dad, who once drove 45 minutes the wrong direction and blamed the GPS, admitted he was wrong. He hugged me before he left. Stiff, awkward, 3 seconds too long. But he did it. Over the next couple months, things shifted slowly. Mom started calling just to ask about Birdie. She asked to take her to the park one Saturday. Asked, not demanded. That was new. Tyler helped me move a dresser and said, "I'm paying rent now and I kind of hate you for it." But he was grinning. I said, "Welcome to adulthood. It's terrible here." Casey was hardest. After 2 months she finally texted, "Mom says I need to apologize, so I'm sorry." I wrote back, "Your purse was in Birdie's chair. Think about that." 3 days later she sent, "That was messed up. I'm actually sorry." 2 words difference, but it meant she'd thought about it. We did Thanksgiving at Grandma Ruth's that year. She said, "This family is sitting at my table and acting like a family or I'll know the reason why." Everyone came. Even Casey, awkward and quiet, carrying a store-bought pie. Grandma made everyone say what they were grateful for. Tyler said, "Not being homeless since Grandma made me pay rent." Dad said he was grateful for the turkey because emotions are still hard for Hank. My mom looked at me and said, "I'm grateful my daughter is stronger than I deserve." Table went quiet. Birdie broke it by yelling, "I'm grateful for Doritos." And everyone laughed until the tension just dissolved. After dinner, Mom and I washed dishes side by side in Grandma's kitchen. He washed, I dried. Nobody said anything profound. It was quiet and it was enough. Things aren't perfect now. We're still rebuilding. Old patterns creep back and I set boundaries she doesn't always like. Tyler got a full-time job. Casey and I are civil. Maybe we'll be close someday. I'm okay either way. But I know this. Leaving that house with garbage bags and $600 was the hardest and best thing I ever did. My Grandma Ruth is the toughest woman alive. And that little girl whose aunt's purse mattered more than her seat at dinner? She has her own chair at every table now. Her own plate. And a mom who'll never let anyone make her feel like she doesn't belong. That's my story. Thank you for staying through it. If any of this hit close to home, just know you deserve a real seat at the table too. If you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate a like. And if you do anything differently or want to share your own experience, drop it in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you so much for watching.